There's a story from Jewish lore about a grandmother who was walking with her 5-year-old grandson on the beach when suddenly a rogue wave comes up and grabs that child and carries him out to sea. She looks up at the sky, shakes her fist, and says, "God, this is unacceptable, unbearable. You cannot take an innocent child." And just as those words came out of her mouth, another rogue wave comes and deposits the child smiling back at her feet. She picks up the child in her arms, looks up to the sky, and said, "This child had a hat." I did my internship in Worcester, Massachusetts with Reverend Barbara Merritt, who came into the ministry actually 3 years before my predecessor, Reverend Lindsay Bates. And Barbara tells a story about her own spiritual mentor, a teacher in India, that I've never forgotten. She said her spiritual mentor was asked the question, what is the worst karma a person can undergo here on earth? What's the greatest difficulty, the harshest circumstance? Now, Barbara says she thought the teacher would talk about some horrible or tragic circumstance, the death of a child, perhaps, crippling poverty, violence, war. But what the teacher said was unexpected. The worst karma, the teacher said, the worst karma is to be ungrateful. If you suffer from ingratitude, then it won't matter what blessings and goodness are in your life. You won't be capable of receiving it. In contrast, if you are grateful, then even the most challenging of circumstances, you will be able to recognize the many gifts that you are receiving. Now, when my mentor heard this, she says, I immediately saw the truth in this observation, but this was not altogether good news. For you see, many of us suffer from this particular variety of bad karma, rather than possessing an ever grateful heart that is able to focus on the positive things in our lives, all the good company that we encounter, and all the blessings we receive on a daily basis. We, or should I say I occasionally, even frequently, get lost and forgetful. This morning, I'd like to suggest that the core religious task, especially for us Unitarian Universalists, is cultivating gratitude. And for most of us, this takes practice. It takes discipline. Now, it's important to be clear what gratitude is and is not. By gratitude, I mean a depth sense of thankfulness. I love how William Blake defines gratitude. He said, gratitude is heaven itself. Now, many of us grew up hearing, you should be grateful for what you have. There are a lot of kids that don't have what you do. Or, be thankful that you have a lot more than others. And this approach to gratitude could be called reverse envy. For reverse envy is a belief that we ought to be happy, that we have something that others don't. And reverse envy can get masked as gratitude when it seems that God or the universe has smiled upon us as opposed to others. Anthony DeMello, a Jesuit priest from India, tells a parable that gets at this. In a small Indian town, the One afternoon, a young man acquired a new bicycle, and he rode it to the local market. And there at the market, he got to talking with his friends, and out of habit, he walked home, being completely contented with his day. And the next morning, he woke up in great anxiety as he realized that he had left his new bicycle at the market. So he rushed back there, and he was delighted to find his bicycle exactly where he had left it. So he went to the flower stand and bought a flower and took it to the temple to give thanks for this blessing. But when he exited the temple, his bicycle was gone. If we express gratitude only when life is easy, or when something goes our way, we're missing out on the gifts of truly giving thanks. It's easy to think of gratitude as a spontaneous response to the awareness of gifts received, and it is, in part, that. But I agree with many spiritual teachers that gratitude is a discipline, the explicit effort to acknowledge that all I am and have is given to me as a gift of love, a gift to be celebrated with joy. I love the Jain spiritual tradition, where shukrana, or thankfulness, is to be had for all experiences, not just our blessings. And so practicing gratitude through actions like service and living with compassion and nonviolence. I'd like to acknowledge we have someone who grew up in the Jain tradition who's visiting us for the very first time. Her name is Sanjyote Dunung, and she happens to be running for a local office, and she'd love to just get to know people here. Not an endorsement, but a welcome. Great to have you here, Sanjyote. But today I want to suggest that cultivating gratitude is the defining spiritual practice for Unitarian Universalists. It is our most fruitful discipline on how to deal with a changing world and how to deal with the changes in our lives. Galen Gingrich, the Unitarian minister who first articulated this idea to me, gives two reasons that this is so. One has to do with a regular practice of gratitude, and the other has to do with an ethic of gratitude. A regular practice of gratitude reminds us how utterly dependent we are on the people and world around us for everything that matters. And from this flows an ethic of gratitude that calls us, indeed, I think it obligates us, to create a future that justifies an increasing sense of gratitude from the human family as a whole. This ethic of gratitude calls us to nurture the world that nurtures us in return. It's our duty to foster the kind of environment that we want to take in and therefore become. Now, being grateful doesn't mean being okay with how everything is in the world. This ethic of gratitude means that we cannot ignore what isn't right just because we enjoy all sorts of blessings. Because we have reason to be grateful calls us to a greater clarity of what is worthy of getting upset over and what really isn't worth dwelling on. And to live with this kind of gratitude means practicing gratitude and expressing it regularly, and responding to what I would call the holy discontent within us. Because sometimes we are discontent and ought to be discontent. We ought to be maladjusted to certain ways our society is. And that holy discontent that accompanies genuine gratitude leads us to dedicate ourselves to helping change the world from the way it is to the way we imagine it can be, the way we so dearly know it can be. So what about this practice of gratitude? How do we do it? The finest practice way I've encountered is a gratitude journal. Some people love to write gratitudes in the morning to start their day. I personally find it so helpful to write gratitudes at night, just before bed. I find it helps me sleep better. I sometimes wake up with one of the 5 things that I get myself to write each day at night. I wake up with one of those things on my mind, and that it grounds me unlike any other practice. And several people in AA have shared with me the same thing. The cultivation of what many people call an attitude of gratitude makes a real difference in facing the challenges that come with the changes in life. And there's a near enemy of gratitude, which is called denial. Pretending that everything is sweet. Imagining that everything really is okay and let's keep a smile on our face and everything's going to be okay. When that reality, having a distorted way such that everything looks like what we want it to look like, ends up estranging us, not only from the world, but from ourselves. An ethic of gratitude urges us to share the blessings that we share. And here at UUSG, this community and shared ministry provides blessings to many people. And if we wish, we can provide blessings to many more. But that will mean going to 2 services. While there isn't a plan yet how to do so, I and the board are listening to folks who have ideas. And we all invite you to be in touch with us. And if you wish, on December 7th, gather with us following the service here in the sanctuary, because we want to hear from you. We want to hear what you're thinking about to return to 2 services, as this congregation had been doing for decades prior to the pandemic. As for gratitude, I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity to serve here, especially for this covenant, this distinctive covenant that I have not encountered anywhere else. Being desirous of promoting practical goodness in the world and of aiding each other in our moral and religious improvement, we have associated ourselves together, not as agreeing in opinion, not as having attained universal truth and belief or perfection in character, but as seekers after truth and goodness. If I had time, I would share so much more about covenant, but that will be for another time. At this time, I wished you all to have a meaningful Thanksgiving, even if you're not happy with all of what's happening in your life. But remember, it's the limitations in our lives that provide us where we need to look for the blessings and to live with ever more conviction, clarity, courage, and joy. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen.
Visit us at uusg.org.